It always starts quietly somewhere between a leaked photo, a half-sentence from an insider, and a whisper that spreads faster than wildfire. Hollywood is notorious for secrets, but this one hit differently. Because no one, and I mean no one, expected Sophie Turner to walk out of a whirlwind breakup only to walk straight into the arms of one of the most iconic musicians of our generation. Yes, Chris Martin. The same Chris Martin who once filled stadiums with Coldplay's heartbreak anthems. The same Chris Martin who's been tied to Dakota Johnson for years. The same man who, somehow, has now become the center of a story no one saw coming. It began with a blurry paparazzi shot, the kind of grainy photo that usually ends up ignored. But not this time. Two silhouettes leaving a private bar in London, his head tilted toward hers, her hand brushing past his as they moved through the back exit. At first, tabloids didn't believe it. Fans didn't believe it. Twitter laughed it off. Sophie Turner? Newly single Sophie Turner? The Queen of the North herself? With Chris Martin? It sounded like someone threw celebrity names into a blender and pressed chaos. But then came the second sighting. Clearer, closer. Late night, soft lighting, the glow of a street lamp catching Sophie's profile while Chris leaned in the way men do when they're listening a little too closely. Not casually, not accidentally, intentionally. And suddenly the whispers grew teeth. Headlines followed. Are Sophie Turner and Chris Martin quietly seeing each other? Coldplay frontman spotted with actress in intimate conversation. Where does Dakota Johnson stand? Hollywood loves new couples, especially the kind that come out of emotional wreckage. And Sophie had been through a year of exactly that. A divorce plastered across tabloids, custody discussions dissected by millions of strangers, paparazzi waiting outside her apartment at sunrise. Through it all, she stayed calm, composed. She partied quietly with friends, held her children close, and stepped into a life she never planned to be living so soon. Then came Peregrine Pearson, British aristocrat, billionaire family, charming in that polished, posh way. For a moment, people believed they were good for each other, two people rebuilding, trying to find peace after heartbreak. But it ended as quickly as it began. No scandal, no drama, just distance. Life moving in different directions. So when the Chris Martin story hit, the world wasn't just surprised, it was electrified. Because this wasn't a rebound, it wasn't convenient. This was messy, unexpected, and cinematic. A global rock star and a Game of Thrones icon? That's the kind of pairing that breaks the internet. Insiders say the two connected at a private industry dinner in Malibu weeks before anyone knew. Sophie was in LA temporarily, finalizing work on a project. Chris arrived late, casual in sweatpants and a jacket, the way men dress when they've stopped trying to impress anyone. He was reportedly quiet that night, unusually distracted until Sophie walked in. One source claimed he couldn't stop looking at her. Another said they laughed together like people who already knew each other. But nobody suspected romance. Not yet. The first spark happened when they slipped away from the group to talk privately. For 20 minutes, they sat on an outdoor terrace while the waves crashed below. He leaned forward. She lifted her chin when she talked. He rested his hand against his jaw as if absorbing every word. Someone at the dinner described it later as charged, the kind of moment that makes everyone turn their head and whisper, "What's going on there?" But it didn't become a story until he invited her to one of his rehearsals. Not a full Coldplay show, not a public event, a rehearsal. His safe place, his private space. For him, that meant something. And when Sophie showed up wearing simple jeans and a white t-shirt, hair tied back, no glam, no entourage, people noticed. She wasn't acting like a celebrity. She was acting like someone comfortable. Then came the night everything shifted. London. A private bar known for hosting celebrities who want to disappear for a few hours. Sophie arrived with a friend. Chris came separately. They sat in a dim booth in the corner, deep in conversation, leaning close, shoulders brushing in that accidental but not accidental way. A bartender said the chemistry was undeniable, not romantic in a dramatic way, but gentle, intimate, like two people escaping the world together. Near midnight, they slipped out the back door. Together. That was the photo. The blurry one. The spark that lit the fuse. But it wasn't just the sightings that made the story explode. It was the emotional timing of it all. Sophie Turner, fresh out of heartbreak, building herself from the ashes. Chris Martin, a man who spent years navigating quiet, private relationships and writing songs about longing. Two people who understand the weight of being misunderstood by the entire world. Two people who know what it feels like to have your life dissected in headlines and hashtags. Hollywood couldn't stop talking. Some insiders insist it's casual. Others claim it's already deep. One source said Chris has a softness around her that he hasn't shown anyone publicly in years. Another said Sophie makes him laugh in a way that's unguarded. Fans began connecting dots, comparing timelines, digging for clues hidden in paparazzi galleries. TikTok exploded with theories. Reddit turned into an investigation board. But the real question wasn't, are they dating? It was, how did this happen so fast? Because if you look at Sophie Turner's past year, this wasn't the story anyone expected. She was supposed to be healing quietly, focusing on motherhood, rekindling friendships, not stepping into one of the most unexpected celebrity plot twists of the year. And yet, maybe this is exactly what she needed. Not chaos, not drama, but someone older, gentler, grounded in a different kind of fame. Someone who's lived through breakups in front of the world. Someone who knows how to disappear without isolating. Someone who understands artistry not just as a career, but as survival. Chris Martin isn't flashy, he isn't loud, he isn't a Hollywood stereotype. He's introspective, sensitive, low profile. And Sophie, after everything, seems drawn to exactly that. Not money, she had that. Not status, she already lived at the peak. What she wants now, according to those close to her, is calm, peace. Someone who won't turn her life into a spectacle. And Chris, he's been known to fall for women who carry both light and complexity. Gwyneth Paltrow, Jennifer Lawrence, Dakota Johnson, every woman he's been with has a depth to her, a storm beneath the surface. Sophie Turner fits that pattern effortlessly. But there's one more layer that made this story explode, the Dakota Johnson angle. Because Chris and Dakota's relationship was long, private, and reportedly serious. So when the Sophie rumors surfaced, fans immediately wondered, was Dakota blindsided? Did they break up quietly? Was the timeline overlapping? No answers, no comments, just silence. And silence in Hollywood is louder than any statement. This story isn't just about romance. It's about timing, healing, reinvention. It's about two very public people trying to carve out something private in a world that refuses to let them. And as the sightings continue, as whispers grow louder, as fans dissect every movement, they both seem unbothered, as if they've already made their choice, as if the world will understand, eventually. And this is where things get complicated, because the story doesn't stop here. It only gets stranger, more layered, more intense. Because the next twist, the one no one saw coming, would change the entire narrative and drag this quiet connection into the center of Hollywood's biggest storm. The story could have faded after that second sighting. Hollywood is a busy place. Celebrities cross paths every day, and rumors rise and fall like waves. But something happened the following week that turned quiet whispers into a full-blown storm, something no one expected, not even the insiders who always claim they knew it was coming. Because suddenly, everyone realized this wasn't just a rebound, a coincidence, or a misinterpreted night out. Sophie Turner and Chris Martin were showing signs of something real, something intentional, something that neither of them seemed interested in hiding anymore. It started with a simple detail. Chris Martin canceled a private dinner he'd been planning for months, a low-key event with friends, the kind of gathering he never misses. He's quiet, but he's loyal, famously punctual, and rarely backs out last minute. But this time, when he canceled, he gave a reason. I already have plans. No explanation. No clarification. Just that. And according to one insider, he had that slightly distracted smile on his face, the kind people get when they're thinking about someone instead of something. Then, Sophie Turner was spotted leaving his Malibu neighborhood in a black SUV. No disguise, no sunglasses. Just her, looking calm and comfortably exhausted, the way people look when they've spent hours talking instead of trying. Photographers said she wasn't rushing. She moved slowly, casually, as if she wasn't sneaking away but simply living. That alone changed the tone of the entire story. Suddenly, the internet had receipts, real ones, and fans, armed with timelines and detective-level enthusiasm, began piecing together details. Photos, flight paths, social media hints, small interactions at events nobody paid attention to before, all of it suddenly fitting into a narrative that felt too perfect to ignore. Sophie Turner, who had spent the last year rebuilding her life from the rubble of heartbreak, was glowing in photos again. Not overly glamorous, not overly styled, just glowing. That effortless kind of brightness that can't be manufactured. And Chris? He had that same soft, almost shy smile in paparazzi shots that he once had during the early days of his past romances. The one that says, yes, it's happening, yes, I'm happy, and no, I don't care, who knows. But the real turning point, what made everyone stop and ask, is this actually serious? Happened at a Coldplay rehearsal again. Except this time, Sophie didn't just watch from the corner. She sat on the floor near the soundboard, legs crossed, sipping tea, laughing with crew members, talking to the backup vocalists like she'd always known them. A few people said she stayed there, the entire rehearsal, fully present, not on her phone, not distracted, just watching Chris work, immersed in the moment. And Chris, every time he glanced in her direction, his face softened, every single time, the kind of softness people don't fake. After rehearsal, the two left together out the back entrance, but they didn't keep distance this time. Their hands brushed. She leaned into him when she laughed. He held the door for her without thinking about cameras. It wasn't performative. It wasn't careful. It was natural. That's when Hollywood panicked. Because if Sophie and Chris were truly together, it meant the Daily Mail, Du Mois, TMZ, every outlet that pretended to already know the truth was caught off guard. And nothing threatens the media machine more than a celebrity romance they didn't predict. Immediately, sources began scrambling. Some tried to downplay it, calling the connection early or friendly. Others insisted they were just bonding over divorce recovery, as if heartbreak is a hobby, but the tone was shifting. This wasn't casual. This wasn't random. This was energy. But there was one more detail that made the media frenzy explode, and it had nothing to do with Sophie or Chris directly. It had to do with Dakota Johnson. Dakota had been in a long-term relationship with Chris, quiet and private, the type that doesn't make headlines but is deeply committed behind the scenes. So when Sophie and Chris suddenly appeared together, fans asked the unavoidable question, are Chris and Dakota over? And if so, when did it end? Because the timeline suddenly felt messy. A few outlets began digging. Some insiders claimed Dakota and Chris ended things months ago. Others said they were on a break. Some insisted they were still together when the first Sophie sighting happened. No one had proof. No statements were released. And since Dakota and Chris are notoriously private, neither was expected to confirm or deny anything. Silence became its own kind of headline. And Hollywood thrives on silence. It lets the imagination fill in the blanks. As speculation grew, Chris's friends tried to defend him quietly, leaking that he and Dakota had grown apart earlier in the year, and that he wasn't cheating, that the timeline wasn't overlapping. But fans didn't buy it, not fully, because the internet remembers everything. Photos, interviews, sightings, none of it pointed to a recent breakup. If anything, they looked stable. So now the question wasn't just, is Sophie dating Chris? It was, how did we get here? And who got hurt in the process? This is where the narrative began to split in two. On one side, people cheering for Sophie, the young woman who survived tabloid storms, co-parenting challenges, reorganizing her life from scratch. The woman who everyone believed deserved softness, romance, peace. They said she'd found someone who understood her pain, who knew fame's shadowy corners, who had lived through public heartbreak himself. They loved that she was smiling again. On the other side, people questioning Chris Martin. They wondered if he moved too fast, if he left someone behind, if this was going to lead to a backlash. Chris Martin is notoriously sensitive, empathetic, careful. He writes songs about guilt and longing. He meditates. He disappears for weeks to avoid chaos. His fans wondered if this was a moment where he let emotion pull him faster than logic. And then there was Sophie Turner's ex, Peregrine Pearson. the aristocrat who, at first, seemed untouched by the chaos. But insiders say differently now. One claimed he didn't expect Sophie to move on so quickly. Another said he was blindsided. And yet another said that despite their breakup being mutual, they left things open, believing time might reconnect them. If that's true, Chris Martin changed everything. Meanwhile, Sophie was glowing, and Chris, he looked lighter, happier, more open. It wasn't scandal, it was transition. But the moment that truly confirmed to insiders that this was real, not casual, not flirtation, not confusion, was a private backyard gathering at a friend's house in Brentwood. No paparazzi, no press. Just 15 people, all close friends. Sophie and Chris arrived together. She wore sweats, he wore a t-shirt. They sat next to each other at the long fire pit, knees touching. According to people there, Sophie leaned into him when she talked. He rested his hand lightly on her back. They shared inside jokes, whispered to each other, and moved like people who weren't performing, weren't hiding, just comfortable. When Sophie got up to grab a drink, Chris watched her walk away. A soft smile, quiet, almost reverent. One of the hosts later said, "That man is smitten. I've never seen him like that." And that's when everything changed. Because when celebrities stop protecting a connection, that means it's real. But real doesn't mean simple. Not in Hollywood, not with past relationships still forming shadows, not with paparazzi waiting for missteps, not with fans speculating what this means for Dakota Johnson, or for Sophie's healing, or for Chris's emotional stability. The story now has momentum, stakes, tension, and a looming shift that no one sees coming yet. Because while the world obsesses over whether Sophie Turner and Chris Martin are officially together, something else is happening behind the scenes. Something deeper. Something that will push this story into a completely different direction. One that forces everyone involved to make choices they weren't prepared to face. The story should have reached its natural end with that Brentwood gathering, two people quietly finding comfort in each other, healing in private, letting life take them somewhere unexpected. But Hollywood never allows a soft landing. Not when the names are this big. Not when the timelines overlap. Not when the emotional stakes involve three celebrities whose fan bases practically live online. The truth is, Sophie Turner and Chris Martin's connection wasn't just becoming public. It was becoming impossible to ignore. And it was only a matter of time before someone, somewhere, decided to make it a problem. It happened during Coldplay's small secret show in Los Angeles, a warm, intimate event where fans stood shoulder to shoulder, phones lowered, everyone suspended in a quiet kind of magic. Chris Martin walked onto the stage with his usual gentle smile, hands tucked into pockets, soaking in the applause like sunlight. His voice, when he started singing, carried a softness people hadn't heard in years. A softness that felt new. Sophie Turner was there. Not up front, not backstage. She stood near the side wall, wearing a denim jacket and no makeup, blending into the shadows, hugging her arms around herself like she was trying to make her heart smaller. But people noticed anyway. Eyes shifted, whispers rippled, and before anyone had time to process it, someone snapped a picture, a clear one. Sophie Turner watching Chris Martin sing, her face lit by stage glow, her expression soft and unguarded. That photo went viral within 15 minutes. And that's when everything exploded. Fans on Twitter created chaos. Some were ecstatic, writing things like, "They look cute together," and "He deserves someone fun." Others were furious, convinced that this meant Dakota Johnson had been replaced or blindsided. Coldplay fans, Marvel fans, Game of Thrones fans, everyone collided into a single debate that no one could control. The next morning, Dakota Johnson's name trended higher than both Chris and Sophie. Not because she said anything, not because she posted anything, but because her silence became its own kind of message. Hollywood insiders say Dakota found out about the Sophie rumors at the same time the public did when the picture from the concert began circulating. And according to someone close to her, she wasn't angry at Sophie. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't dramatic. Instead, she was simply quiet. She went inward, the source said. She's not the type to lash out, but she was shocked. That shock reached the press quickly, and where there is silence, tabloids fill the gaps. Suddenly, headlines were screaming things like, "Dakota Johnson heartbroken over Chris Martin's new romance." Inside the love triangle no one predicted. Has Sophie Turner replaced Dakota in Chris Martin's life? None of it confirmed, all of it loud. And as the noise grew louder, Sophie Turner found herself in the center of a storm she never asked for. She had already lived one public heartbreak. She had already been judged, dissected, criticized for decisions the public didn't understand. Now she was being thrown into another narrative, one built on speculation instead of fact. But the turning point, what truly pushed this story into a new and dangerous direction, was a single paparazzi video taken outside a restaurant in Notting Hill. Sophie, hair pulled back, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, was leaving dinner with a friend. The paparazzi swarmed her, dozens of voices firing questions like bullets. Are you dating Chris Martin? Is Dakota Johnson furious? When did it start? Were you seeing him before your breakup with Peregrine? Are you replacing Dakota? Is Chris the reason you're suddenly glowing? Sophie kept walking, fast, silent, focused. But then she slipped. Not physically, emotionally. The cameras caught it. A tiny moment, barely a fraction of a second, her lips tightening, her eyebrows lowering, her breath catching just slightly. But it was enough. The internet stitched the video frame by frame, analyzing her expression like it was evidence in a criminal case. Some said she looked guilty. Others said she looked annoyed. Some said she looked sad. In truth, she just looked overwhelmed. And Chris? He hated it. Friends say he called Sophie the moment the video hit Twitter, his voice shaking the way it does when he feels responsible for someone else's pain. He apologized, repeatedly, told her he never wanted her dragged into chaos again, vowed to protect her from the media circus. But protection is difficult when everyone wants to take something from you. Within 48 hours, 4 major tabloids published exclusive stories with conflicting narratives. One claimed Chris and Sophie were inseparable and in love. Another insisted they were just friends consoling each other. A third said Chris was torn between 2 women. And a fourth claimed Sophie was not ready for a serious relationship. In 19, all wrong, all guesses, all written because speculation sells better than truth. The noise became deafening. The breaking point came during a small lunch Chris attended with close friends. He was quiet, withdrawn, picking at his salad while his friends debated whether he should address the situation publicly. Should he set the record straight? Should he defend Sophie? Should he clarify his relationship with Dakota? He listened, he nodded, he sighed. And then, according to someone who was there, he said something that stunned everyone. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I won't pretend I don't care about Sophie. That sentence changed the trajectory of everything. The next day, Chris was photographed standing outside Sophie's London hotel, waiting by the entrance with his hands in his pockets and his head down, the way people do when they're trying to shield someone from the world. Sophie emerged wearing a black coat and a knitted beanie, and when she saw him, she broke into a soft smile. They walked away together, close but not touching, respectful, cautious, aware of the eyes watching them. And then something happened that the world didn't expect. Dakota Johnson quietly unfollowed Chris Martin on Instagram. No statement, no explanation, just one silent action that felt louder than any interview. That was the moment the story crystallized. The moment the world collectively realized, this wasn't rumor, this wasn't speculation, this was real. Chris Martin and Sophie Turner were not just talking, not just bonding, not just healing, they were choosing each other. And that choice was about to reshape their lives in ways neither of them could predict. Because in Hollywood, love isn't just love. It's a spotlight, it's a battlefield. It's a story the world feels entitled to control. But this time it feels different. Sophie Turner isn't the young actress trying to find her footing anymore. Chris Martin isn't the singer hiding behind metaphors and melodies. They are 2 adults with scars, histories, and hearts, still learning how to trust the world again. And maybe, just maybe, that's why they found each other. Not because it's easy, not because it's convenient, but because it's real. And real in Hollywood is the rarest thing of all. So whether this connection becomes a love story, a brief chapter, or a turning point, one thing is certain. Sophie Turner and Chris Martin didn't just spark a rumor. They ignited a phenomenon. And the world, whether supportive, skeptical, or outright obsessed, is watching. Not because it's scandal, not because it's drama, but because it feels like the beginning of something fragile, unexpected, and beautifully human. A reminder that even after heartbreak, even after chaos, even under the weight of the spotlight, love can still find its way.